And he had a chair in his hand, and he had it raised over my head. And the class was chanting him on, egging him on in a little chant. And the only thing I could think to do without starting a physical fight, or if I'd made a move, I think the chair would have come down, I just used that practice.
Really?
The Spiritual Freedom Show with Richard Lawrence, where politics is not the answer, materialism counts for nothing, and spirituality will set you free.
Richard.
Darren.
So let me tell you why I'm looking forward to the show today.
Yeah.
Conflict is a part of everybody's life in one way or another, and I'm not just talking about war. I'm also talking about our personal experience on an everyday basis. With whether that's at home, whether that's at the office, whether it's even on the street. Bumping into somebody and something happening there, and we all have to deal with difficult people in one way or another. And I think why I'm excited is because what we can offer people today who are watching and listening is two spiritual ways that they can deal with these situations and these people in their life. Yeah. But I wanted to start, or invite you to start actually with this absolutely key insight that I think we're given in a teaching called Fight Ye the Evil.
Yes.
By the cosmic master known as Mars Sector 6. And maybe we can just start by sharing the message that he gives us about fighting evil and why it's so important.
Yes, well, for centuries, for thousands of years actually, the order of the day on this planet has been pacifism among the spiritual community. And for a very good reason. It provided a complete antidote to the nature of hostile humanity. So it wasn't a mistake, but there has been a change. So this transmission, which is in this journal here, Cosmic Voice, Fight Ye the Evil, marked a big change. No longer is it enough to just adopt a passive approach.
Okay.
Now we have to be more active. We have to fight the evil, but we fight it in spiritual ways. And a brilliant point is made in that transmission by Mars Sector 6, same source that gave the 9 freedoms that we often refer to. That if you don't, you're allowing the evil forces to get worse. You're not helping them. And that's something that did get missed in a lot of teachings, even in both Western and Eastern. The idea of sealing the door where evil dwells is really allowing it to continue.
Yeah.
But that's an element, just one element of Fight Ye the Evil, this transmission, which is don't allow evil forces to involve themselves more. Make a stand. It's good for them as well as being necessary. And what now we're trying to do in this day and age, and this is the big, massive change that we've talked about many times, is bring a transmutation. It's no longer enough just to go off and leave, never mind evil, just materialism, material things, worldly life. Now we have to change it. Now we have to raise it. Now we have to transmute it. And this is also true of evil. And he gives us these 2 ways of doing it.
Yeah, no, that's great. So what I take away from that is if we see something that's wrong, if we're aware of something that's wrong, if something is happening to us that's wrong, it's not about detaching from that, turning a blind eye or pretending it's not happening.
Yeah.
It's about actually engaging in that in an active way.
Yes.
And what we're going to talk about on the show are 2 spiritual ways that we can do that.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's start with the first one then, and let's talk about love. I mean, what I thought I'd prompt us with here is that you had an experience, I know, in the early days, I think when you were working as a school teacher, which I think gives a kind of a beautiful illustration about how you can use this energy to kind of diffuse a situation.
Yes,
like
well,
that.
This is a wonderful, wonderful practice, which is contained in the book Realize Your Inner Potential, that I was privileged to co-author with Dr. George King, the last book that he wrote, actually, and I completed it posthumously. He left notarized permission for me to do that, and it was published. And there are I think over 40 practices in this book. To me, this is, I mean, I know I'm not here to plug a book. I get no royalties from this, let me say. Yeah. But this is a book which is really transformative. And if we all followed the 40 plus practices in here, that's all we would need. I'm not saying there aren't other good things out there, but this is enough
I see. Yeah.
together with the 12 blessings and the various other things that are available. This would be enough to take us all the way through to enlightenment and beyond. It's a wonderful, and above all, help others, serve others. And in here is a practice. It's also in another book called a small little booklet, actually, called The Practices of Aetherius. And it's called the protective practice.
All right.
And it's a guideline given by the master Aetherius. It's quite short. It's very simple. And it tells you exactly how to do it. I'm not going to go through the whole practice, but you can easily obtain it.
Sure.
But the essence of it is that in the heat of an argument, or it could be, I think it could be applied in any situation where you have conflict or bad energies generated towards you by a difficult person of some kind. They might be very jealous. They might be a combination of things. This is what you do, according to the Master Aetherius, and in the course of it, you look them in the eyes with love, and you just say to yourself mentally, God bless the eyesight of so-and-so, whoever it might be.
Sure.
You know, if you don't, you might not know their name. It might be somebody on a bus or in a train or someone in the, but you just bless them, and you mean it. You know, it's now they don't know you're doing that. You're, as far as they're concerned, you're looking at them. But the eyes can channel energy as well. They through the eyes can they are the mirrors of the soul. It's said, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great love can radiate. I think two things happen. I think you help them. You help to, as it were, transmute the energies. But you also help yourself, because it can be either intimidating, it can be annoying. You yourself can be prone to these. You know, when one person gets annoyed, another, and you transmute your own internal resistance to this energy as well, and a great healing can take place. Now, I used to be a school teacher. I worked in a social priorities school. It was quite a dangerous school. The chemistry teacher had his beard set alight by pupils. The deputy headmaster was hit over the head by a cricket bat by one of the pupils. It was, I mean, it's quite a place to be. There was a number of boys, this was all boys, at the school who were really waiting to leave. They weren't allowed to leave. And it wasn't at the best time for English education, I don't think. It's in London. Anyway, I was the class music teacher, which was a laugh, except that I had a very good reggae band, which I formed, and one of them became the biggest reggae star in Ghana later on.
Really?
For a while. I made an album, dedicated it to his music teacher, so there you are. But however, on the whole, it was mayhem. And we had a particularly bad class. There was a boy who later went off, actually, into some even more specialist school, because he was quite dangerous. Violent, and he had a chair in his hand, and he had it raised over my head, and the class was chanting him on, egging him on in a little chant, and the only thing I could think to do without starting a physical fight, or if I'd made a move, I think the chair would have come down. I just used that practice.
Really? Wow.
And that's all I could think of doing at that point. And all I can say is, I mean, I said a little prayer as well. I looked him in the eyes, and I said, may God bless, I knew his name, the eyesight of so-and-so. And he did put the chair down. And the boys who were chanting were quite disappointed, maybe, I don't know. And they probably didn't really want it. They were just seeing what would happen.
Yeah, sure.
And then it all calmed down. So it did really, really work on that occasion, I must say. And I saw this boy actually afterward. Later on, he was taken off to another school, and I bumped into him in a street. And he was very different with me, extremely respectful. And it seemed to change something. So, that's an extreme example.
Sure.
It can be used in much more mundane. I mean, you might be in a difficult domestic situation.
Sure.
And sometimes all you've got is your inner reserves. And you can follow that practice. It's only one. There are others. In Fight Ye the Evil, one thing that's recommended is just to radiate white light or radiate violet flame too. But you can also radiate through you, yes. Yeah. That's a transmuting force. Violet is a transmuting color.
Okay.
And you'd be surprised what can happen. You might be in an office sitting there in an extremely unpleasant, bad atmosphere, and it used to, I don't know what it's like so much now in workplace offices. Well, we have an office, but it's wonderful. But I imagine there are still, because certain things aren't allowed now that were allowed in the 80s and so on. But if it is a very unpleasant, nasty atmosphere, it might be, what they call passive aggression or whatever. You can be sitting at your desk doing the violet flame practice, which is simply to visualize violet flame coming up. And the violet flame comes from Mother Earth, which is the most wonderful, caressing, velvety energy, a force from the Mother Earth. And the Mother Earth is, we should revere the Mother Earth. The ancient Greeks had it right. Gaia, some of them anyway, placed her at the top of their hegemony. I don't know if that's the word, but they're gods and goddesses. This is a goddess, of course. And rightly so. We should revere her every day. But if we make a mental request, the violet flame will always be given to us by the Mother Earth, and it will come up. Now, first of all, when you start with this, you imagine it, you visualize it, but it's a real thing. It really exists, and it will take on great presence. I actually remember we were doing a campaign, actually, about the Mother Earth one year.
Yeah.
And I do remember giving talks, and lots of other people were too. We were just focused on the Mother Earth. And I remember going to bed one night, and I was like the purple man. I wasn't even trying to visualize it. I was just lying there, and it was just the whole room the energy will come back to you. If we were out there revering the Mother Earth, but this is the energy connected with her. Some people connected. It's not strictly speaking the Kundalini, although many see the Kundalini some describe it as being in a violet form, but it's certainly linked to it, because that too comes ultimately from the Mother. That's why the Kundalini is female, by the way. Is the Kundalini female on Mars? There's a question for another. So this is but in this case, it's just sitting in your office, just visualize the violet flame coming up through you, and up right away above the head. You can go 30, 40 feet above the head. It's just gently allow it to flow through the whole, not just your body, but around you as well, around the aura, the psychic counterpart to your being, a few inches all the way around you. And you will see, you just try this and see whether it protects you and whether things change around you. There are other things you can do. I used to also had a job at one time working for a stationery company.
Oh, yeah.
And, I was doing some mantra, which I shouldn't have been really doing, but it was in a training session. I was doing it silently because I was so bored with filing cabinets and foolscap paper and all the things we were. Yeah. But nevertheless, somebody in the class suddenly got up and said, if this sellotape was God, I'm not making this up, and these paper clips were our journey to God, and did a whole thing using, there may not have been those things, but different stationary items and the person taking the class looked at him, but it just shows these energies do travel. I mean, this was the marketing director.
People around you. Yes.
Must have done. I thought perhaps, I won't do that again. I thought after that, but these things have a real power. They really do work. And the violet flame can protect you and can help the force that's trying to direct. So rather than just in the old days passively detaching, not engaging, now we can use the spiritual weapons.
Yes. Yeah.
And the first one we're talking about here is love, and using it through the violet flame and using it through the white light, which we use white because it contains all the colors of the spectrum.
Well, I think, one thing that I take away from that, and I think is something for us all to remember, is that we can sometimes tend to compartmentalize our sort of like our spiritual practice and our ordinary life sometimes. But what we're illustrating here is that we can bring these spiritual practices into our everyday life, and spirituality is life. I mean,
it is life.
These energies, they have a real impact on everybody around us.
Yes.
And to remember in those moments when we're most tested, you could say, by the people around us, either at work or other situations that you've described, that we can actually pause for a moment and we can actually be bringing a real energy, not just a feeling, but a real energy of love to the situation, be blessing them, but also be transmuting the anger, the fear, or whatever else that's within us.
Yes.
We can transform that whole situation. I think the example you gave is,
And it's a wonderful practice delivered by the Master Aetherius in the very early days through Dr. King of his mission. He comments on it as well. Dr. King comments on it. He gives the illustration of if you telling a dog off, chiding a dog, and the dog just looks lovingly at you.
Everyone knows
it's
that.
very difficult to tell it off anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a power that it's there to be used, and that's the big change, because I know people who went through the old yogic route, and I'm taking one of them actually went to India, went into the caves, and was taught to detach from the energies completely, because their goal was only one thing, gaining enlightenment themselves. Now we use our psychic powers, we use the powers of visualization, we use the energies as part of our journey. The spiritual practices, as you say, can really improve our life. Same time, by the way, our life experiences, particularly if it's service orientated, can impact on our practices as well.
Yeah.
The two work together. There's no longer that difference. And I actually think in the old days, an advancing soul would have to move between different types of life. They would have to have lives where they were in the caves or in the ashrams, in a monk or something like this. And there are Christian monks who've levitated and demonstrated powers in the past and projected and so forth. And St. Teresa of Avila certainly had powers, for example. And Hildegard of Bingen is another one. I mean, there are people in that tradition as well, but they were very often in monasteries or in retreat. So you'd have those lives, and then you'd have lives where you came back into the world and worked with others and did some good works. Now, in the new age, as we're going into it, you can do both together. There's no longer a separation. You can advance yourself and serve others at one and the same time, because it's one and the same thing.
Yeah, that's a great revelation about what we have now, actually, the opportunity we have now in front of us.
And part of that is fighting the evil, yes. And recognizing that it exists, and not denying it, and not ignoring it, but actually trying to transmute it.
Well, actually, coming back to that for a moment, I mean, we've talked about these kind of experiences and these situations that can happen in our personal lives on an everyday basis, but obviously we also live in a situation on Earth where we have global conflict as well.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, we have the Ukraine war still going on, we have the war in Gaza. I mean, how do we apply the same teaching in that context?
Well, the big mistake, I think, that is made, and you can see why they would make it, is that they think, and they've always thought this, and it goes back to the First World War, 1914-18, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was the war to end all wars.
Yeah.
And that's the idea. And the wars that we're seeing now, I'm not going to name any sides particularly, but they think that if they beat the others,
That'll be it.
Yeah. And it won't be it.
Yeah.
Even if they crush the others, that won't be it. That's not the end of it, because the seeds of hate, the seed have been sown,
right,
and they will flower through some form or another until they're transmuted. It's the same internally as it is externally. The internal energies all have to be risen. All of them have to be risen to a higher level for us to advance into enlightenment. And in the world, that has to happen. So, if some of the diplomats and negotiators use the protective practice as published in Realize Your Inner Potential, every diplomat in the world should have a copy of this book.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, I can't argue. But it's so true.
I mean, it would be, in all seriousness, a very, very different world.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, but what about the role of individuals? Because we can finish on this point. I think is often you can look at a global catastrophe or a conflict that's going on, and you can feel pretty powerless to make a difference to that.
Oh yes.
So I think that's something
You're not powerless.
Exactly.
You're never powerless. You can make a massive difference to it. It's just that you won't necessarily know what difference you have made. Whereas if you give healing to an individual, and you never quite know with an individual how effective it will be, it generally does something for them. You might cure them completely, you'll get a feedback. You'll know. And not that you should be waiting for the feedback as a healer, by the way. You shouldn't really. But nevertheless, things will happen, and it will encourage you. I remember a woman who couldn't heal and said she couldn't heal, took one of my courses. I said, you've got to come. We've got a big demonstration. It was in New Zealand, actually. And I'm short of healers. It's a big event. We need you to help. If it's up to you, but it would be good, and you can do it. She said, I can't do it. I just come on courses. I don't do it. I just like courses. I said, well, come on this one. This woman cured somebody who was partially blind. Wow. It doesn't generally, and they had they could see a bit. They're very thick-rimmed glasses.
Oh, yeah, okay.
After she'd given them one healing at this open-air event in New Zealand, the person took their glasses off.
Wow.
Now, I don't know how long it lasted, but that woman then got a feedback. Now, when you're praying for peace in Ukraine, let's say, or Gaza, which we can all do, and I would like to say we all should do now, but that's up to people. Then, or if you don't regard it as prayer, world healing, sending energy out, sending good energy out. Just look at it that way. We used to have a group actually in a part of the world where you weren't allowed to pray at that time because of the regime, and they just called it energy practice. But send out good power. You won't get that feedback like this woman got from her patient who was partially blind, but you might have saved 10 lives. You don't know.
Yeah.
So you can do it.
Yeah, and I think just to reinforce that, the same energy that we're using in this person's situations, those conflicts that we talked about when you're blessing the eyesight, is the same energy that we're drawing on and radiating outwards in those situations. Yeah. And if it works in individuals, there's no reason why it would not be working on a larger scale at the same time.
Love is the carrier for the energy.
Well, I think this is, we've explored here just one of the two spiritual ways that we work in different days. So I think what we'll pick up next time is the second one.
Okay.
Which can, is another tool, another weapon, people's spiritual arsenal that they can use.
Given to Mars Sector 6 in Fight Ye the Evil.
That's right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, it's Darren here. Thanks for tuning into the show. Now, if you enjoyed that episode, don't forget to subscribe for more wisdom from the 9 Freedoms. If you'd like to find out more about the 9 Freedoms, about Mars Sector 6 by Dr. George King, go to our website, that's aetherius.org. Richard and I love hearing from you, receiving your comments, your questions on your spiritual experiences, and talking about them on the show. So do write to us, share them with us at spiritualfreedom@richardlawrence.co.uk. Always remember that service is the jewel in the rock of attainment. See you next time.